According to the Times of Israel, Hamas says it beat Iron Dome with concentrated salvos. The IDF says it didn't. Officials say that despite new tactic by Gaza terror groups, relatively few projectiles managed to penetrate Israel's missile defense system, which had an 86% success rate. Hamas's military wing boasted Monday that it had developed a new rocket launching tactic that overcame Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system, leading to the deaths and injuries of numerous Israelis. As it continues, it says, in response to the onslaught from Gaza, the Israeli military conducted over 300 airstrikes from the air and land, including a rare assassination of a terrorist operative who the IDF said funneled money from Iran to terror groups in the Strip. In the past 2 days, we've renewed the policy of assassinating senior terrorists. We've killed dozens of Hamas and Palestinian-Islamic Jihad terrorists, and we've toppled terror towers. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is also defense minister, said Monday. Now, as we read on the bottom here, it says our message is that this round is over, but the conflict will not end until we regain our rights. The ceasefire between Israel and the Gaza terror groups went into effect at 4:30 a.m. Monday, according to the Hamas and Islamic Jihad terror groups. Now, for a while, there's been this conflict ever since the new nation of Israel was established in the 20th century. And in result, many Palestinians were forced to leave the new territory of Israel. And this conflict has been about, apparently, Palestinians wanting to have freedom of movement, right to return, and among other issues, mutual recognition, borders and security, water rights, among other things. Now, during this conflict, there have also been those such as Noni Darwish, whom is the founder of the Arabs for Israel back in 2004, the year that she founded the group. There are two specific verses in the Quran, among others, besides the Tanakh, but these two verses here used in the Quran are used to defend the Israelites. Muslim supporters of Israel would cite these two verses, which is Surah Al-Ma'adah, chapter 5, verses 20 to 21. And it says here, and mention, O Muhammad, when Moses said to his people, O my people, remember the favor of Allah upon you when he appointed among you prophets and made you possessors and gave you that which he had not given anyone among the worlds. O my people, enter the holy land which Allah has assigned to you, and do not turn back from fighting in Allah's cause, and thus become losers. So as we just read there, even the Quran backs the idea that Israel belongs to the Jews. So it's a bit hypocritical to be against the Israelites when you believe in a Quran, or when one believes in a Quran that states the very things I just read from it, and yet still be against them. The Quran is very obviously inspired from the Bible. And so is the idea that was passed on that Israel belongs to the Jews, and that the whole Exodus story about about the escape from Egypt, it's all in there. And yet despite this, there's this Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Now, they might argue that, I mean, well, they do argue that, well, there are Palestinians there that were, well, wrongly forced to leave their homes. All right. Perhaps there should have been a compromise in which the Israelis and the Palestinians would live there together in peace and harmony. Because I understand that being forced to leave your home is wrong, of course. I don't think people. I don't think people should get hurt for several decades over it either. But then again, throughout history, when people are forced to leave their land, it does cause understandable resentment at the same time. So it's a bit of a complicated issue, and admittedly, there should have been a compromise worked out here, because I guess it depends on how you look at it, and that's what makes the issue complicated. That if you're forced to leave when you didn't want to, and there's a bunch of other people that disagree, perhaps they should have come together to come to a mutual compromise, because whenever something like that happens, it does tend to lead to violence. And never mind the clear established thing that that there were ancient Israelites that did reside in ancient Israel. They have well established that in archaeology. But their Quran agrees with it. So I find it very difficult for them to argue against the Israelites at the same time when their own holy book backs it. Backs and recognizes that Israel was given to them by God or Allah, whatever you want to call the character that gave them that land. End of story. And of course, it resulted in Muslims giving into it because they recognized it. Granted, compared to the large amount of Muslims that oppose the Israeli nation, there are some, although fewer in number compared to the large amount that are against the nation, that actually supports them. Such as this person right here, Nani Darwish, the founder of Arabs for Israel. One thing I will say is, one last thing I'll say is that if you put ethnicity and religion together, well, you pretty much get violence like this. Because those two things, you mix them together, it's going to create all kinds of violence, including racism and violence through racism and all kinds of other things. Perhaps if religion wasn't involved in this situation, maybe there could have been a compromise, but at the same time, who knows? Hopefully, it'll eventually get resolved. We'll just have to see what happens. And it's also being reported that with the whole thing about the ceasefire as mentioned in the article, hopefully things will change and a compromise is made of some kind or something, some kind of peaceful arrangement. Because it's things like this that it's conflicts like this that people find, that they try to find a reason to kill each other, and it's gotta stop. It's time to progress as a species. It really is. We'll just have to see what happens in the future.